everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my August wrap up. I feel so happy and excited to say that August was a good reading month for once. I've had quite the tumultuous reading year, I would have to say. And despite August being quite a stressful month, I was able to finish 9 books. So I've got all 9 books here and we've got an array of genres, which is so exciting. So we've got classics, fantasy, romance, nonfiction, fiction, all of them. So without further ado, let's get into these books. And I think this month we're gonna separate the books by genre to kind of mix it up. To start off, I finished 2 fantasy books. The first one being Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 3rd book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I was so happy to finally finish this trilogy. You have no idea. It took me 2 years to actually get to finally finishing the trilogy and reading this book, because I tried reading this book quite a few times and just felt very bored, so I stopped reading it. But I finally pulled through and finished it. So I'm giving this a 3-star, and overall this trilogy is a 3-star trilogy to me. Not my favorite, and I feel like I am quite a rookie when it comes to fantasy. I've only really delved back into the genre in the past 2 years, when the last time I read fantasy was like in high school, maybe even middle school, so a long time ago. But this felt very slowly paced and not that interesting to me. Wasn't in love with any of the characters, wasn't very intrigued or fascinated with what was going on. I did enjoy the world. I thought that was interesting and the world building parts, but I never loved the characters, so I kind of had like this battle of, I like the world that they're set in, but I actually don't really like the characters. So it was really odd in terms of how I was feeling towards the book. But this one, it felt like the slowest pacing out of all 3 books to me. I didn't really like the ending, and I am a stickler for endings. I am a perfectionist at heart, so a lot of endings disappoint me, but this one just felt way too clean for a fantasy. But I'm very happy to finish this, and now I can finally move on to the Six of Crows duology, which I've been wanting to read for the past 3 years since I started this series to begin with. The second fantasy I finished was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is also the finale in the Folk of the Air trilogy, and I gave this 4.5 stars. This was such a breath of fresh air after finishing Ruin and Rising. You have no idea how excited I was to get back into this world. I love Holly Black's writing. I find her writing is very easy to read, and it is descriptive because I feel like you need to be descriptive for fantasy, but it's not over the top. You delve back into this world as soon as you begin the story, and the pacing is so quick. You have so many things going on throughout the whole entire book. You are intrigued the whole time. I loved this, and this was my favorite book out of the series, which I feel like doesn't happen often. I feel like I usually love the first few books in a series and then I get kind of disappointed by the ending, but this one, it just kept building on each story. I was so sad for this to be done, and I will definitely continue on with Holly Black's new series that is also connected to this world. And for the ending, I didn't love it, but I wasn't disappointed. It made sense. It was funny at certain points, and I liked it. I think it was a pretty good ending for the series, but I also wish it continued on. But that's just me wanting to be back in this world with these characters again. And it's so funny because I really did not like Jude in book 1, and now by book 3 I loved her. Next, I read 3 classics, which were all a part of my Reading Like Jess Mariano for a Week reading vlog. That was a really fun vlog. I will link it in the cards so you guys can watch it. But first, we read Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-five. I gave this 4 stars, and I felt such mixed emotions reading this book. I felt every emotion under the sun. I felt frustration, I felt sadness, confusion, anger, happiness, and laughter. Maybe not so much happiness, but a lot of laughter. It was just a very mixed emotion of a book. This is my first book by his, definitely not my last, but his writing took a bit to get used to because it's very sporadic. The sentences change topics very quickly, and it's not that it's hard to follow along. It's quite clear what he's saying, but it's just a lot to kind of jump back and forth. that you kind of need to get used to it. And then once you're used to it, you get really invested into the story. My frustration with this book was the line that is repeated, "So it goes." That line is repeated, I think, over 100 times in this book. And it's not that the line is the annoying part, it's that it is typically attached to the ending of something very sad that happens in the story. It has such a strong significance to it, and it brings this feeling of hopelessness to all the bad things that are happening in this world. It is a war novel, and you're dealing with someone that clearly has some type of PTSD. So it's kind of viewing the outlook of all these bad things happening, being like, well, what else do you expect to happen in life? So it goes. Bad things happen, you just move on. But it's not like a positive tone. It is a very hopelessness tone to it. And I found it annoying at first, but then when I saw the repetition and I tried being aware of why it is said and when it is said, it made me feel a lot of things, because there were such sad moments, but then because of that line, you find you don't have this sense of sadness as much as you typically would in terms of the things that are happening in this book. So overall, I enjoyed this book. I think it deserves a reread to kind of solidify my thoughts better and to dive more deeply into the meaning behind all of his words. But yeah, 4 stars. The next book I read was The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I love Hemingway. I gave this 4.5 stars, might bump it up to 5. I'm finding that a lot of my Hemingway books, I give the initial rating of 4.5, but then because it never leaves my brain, it gets bumped up to 5. Hemingway, I'm sorry if you don't love him, but I do. I love his prose. I find his books so beautiful. They're very character driven. They're extremely funny, yet sad at the same time. And a lot of the times, his books are just like straight vibes. Sometimes the plot doesn't really make sense. Sometimes you don't know why things are happening. Like this one, there's a lot of talk about bull riding, but you're just happy to be along for the ride. And even if the topics aren't very interesting to you, you're still happy to be there and just, going along the story with these characters. Now, this is a love story. So the couple in this book, you want to root for them so bad, but then you know that they're not the best for each other. And it just feels so human. I feel like I can relate to these characters. I feel their pain, I feel their sadness, and I also feel their happiness. It just feels so real and honest and a breath of fresh air. Every single time I read a Hemingway, I'm like, this is why I love him. And I feel like I forget it every single time because with my favorite authors, I don't really read a lot of their works because I want to savor them. So I have a lot of gaps between when I read their books, and it also makes me kind of forget how much I actually love them until I dive back into the work. And then I'm like, whoa, that's why I love them. Then the last classic I read was Emma by Jane Austen, which I gave 4 stars. My eye is itchy. Again, with Hemingway, I also love a good Jane Austen book. Her books are like classical soap operas. They're filled with drama, filled with societal norms, filled with love and family drama. So, so good. So fascinating and funny. Oh my god, hilarious. This book is about a girl named Emma. Emma is so hilariously flawed, yet she doesn't think she is, and people don't really call her out on her BS, except for Mr. Knightley. I love Mr. Knightley. He is so funny. He is very honest, and you gotta love that in a partner because listen, if your partner is not gonna call you out for your bullshit, who is? Now, this book definitely has a slow burn in it, and one of my favorite parts about it was Emma wanting to play matchmaker or Cupid and it always ending up in some type of disaster for herself. It was such a great plot. What I did not love about it though was that there was some focus on a couple of couples that I didn't care about, and there was just so much emphasis on them and not enough emphasis on the couples that I did care about. So some parts of it I was like, oh my god, can we just move on, because who cares? So it wasn't perfect in my mind, but it was still such an enjoyable read. I definitely recommend this one, as I do all of Jane Austen's works that I have read so far. I still have a couple I haven't read, and that is very sad. That the number of read to unread is growing rapidly. Not my favorite of hers, but highly, highly recommended. Next, I'm going to talk about the sci-fi that I read, and I feel like I will be in the minority, but we're going to talk about it. I read Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and I'm giving it 3 to 3.5 stars. My first initial rating was 3.5. The more that I think about it, it is a 3 stars. I don't want to say I'm disappointed, because I have set myself up for failure here. I went into this book thinking it's going to be an automatic 5-star just because of how much people adore this book, and sometimes that gets me in trouble because I expect something that is so grand, and especially for a first book in a complex world, this just wasn't perfect for me. I found the whole book to be really fascinating as to the topic. What I didn't love was Darrow, who was the main character. Just didn't really like him. He's also very young. And I was gonna say that his age really is what I didn't like, but then I think about the Hunger Games, which is this is always compared to the Hunger Games, and I'm pretty sure Katniss is also 16, and I didn't have that problem with her, so I don't know, maybe there's some biases there, but I just didn't love Darrow, and I didn't understand why people brought him into kind of a very high leadership role. And that's the only kind of spoiler I'm gonna give you, because I found him to not be a great person or leader, but that's just me. I will continue the series because I know a lot of people, and again, now I'm taking other people's opinions, but I know a lot of people said it gets better, and I also own the next 2 books in the series, so I might as well try them, and if I don't love them, then I will not complete the series. But I feel like it could get really, really good, and I do have my own predictions as to certain things about where this story is heading, so I kind of want to know if those are right or not. Some of them are a little out of pocket, but I feel like Pierce Brown would do that, so yeah, I don't know. And that's all I'm gonna say. Please don't hate me. Then I read one romance this month, which was Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune, and I am so happy that I gave this 4 stars. You have no idea, after reading Every Summer After and being very disappointed in that book because of a certain trope or plot twist that happens in that book, I kind of wrote off Carly Fortune. But then I got this book and I put it on my summer TBR so that I actually get to it. And oh my god, I was so, so happy. What I love about Carly Fortune's writing, and this could be because it is set in Ontario and I know the places that she's talking about, but it is just so easy for me to envision everything and for me to be there while reading the book that it just feels so real. It's so refreshing. Her books feel like the end of summer for me, being freshly tanned, beach hair, you know, long days at the beach, not wanting to leave, that like youthful love where like it's summertime and you're going back to school and all the opportunities are there and all your dreams are there, and it just gives all of those vibes in her books. And I felt that in Every Summer After. I really enjoyed that book up until a certain plot that completely ruined it for me. But this book also gave off the same vibes. Obviously a love story, and it is a then and now timeline, so you're seeing the couple then and then seeing the couple now, and I believe it's about 10 years of a difference. And I feel like Every Summer After was also in that format, but that made me finish this book so fast. That then and now, where you're getting so many cliffhangers and you're trying to answer questions about what happened in the past and then also what's happening presently, it just keeps you going. And her chapters are quite short, that I appreciate, because that also makes me continue reading. I love the progress between Fern and Will, who are the couple in this book. I understood their struggles. I could rationalize their decisions, especially in their then timeline, which is always a bonus when it comes to romance, where a lot of the times we do not, or we can't rationalize people's communication skills or issues that they have going on. It was just good. It wasn't my favorite, but it was overall a really, really, really good book. I would definitely recommend this as a summer book, or in the middle of the winter when you need that summer vibe. That's when I would read this book. Next, I read one nonfiction book this month, which was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I'm giving this 5 stars. I finished it over 2 weeks ago and I am still speechless. I adored this book. So it is a nonfiction book, and this has a lot of stories about Indigenous wisdom, Mother Nature, science when it comes to nature, botany, and just the teachings of plants. I loved the knowledge and the wisdom that is interweaved through every single story in this book. Not one story is without some type of lesson. I feel like all of them were important. And yes, I did have my favorite stories, but I left every single story feeling a little bit different and learning something small or big. And the writing is so beautiful and descriptive and makes you feel like you are in the marshes with her, talking and learning about these plants and these lessons. And I just give so much respect to the Indigenous people and their culture and the things that are passed down from generation to generation that we are able to learn through their own books and their teachings. It is just so beautiful. I don't really talk about it that much, but I have this like deep connection to nature and Mother Nature that living in the city is very hard for me to cope with, because I feel so calm when I am outside in nature, near water, near plants. And the life that I live is not always able to do these things because of work and obligations and all of those things, right? And this book gives you these tidbits of ways to connect to kind of your roots and Mother Nature in a way that is easily attainable and also inspiring. So I would definitely recommend this book to anyone that is interested in those topics, and maybe even if you aren't, to kind of open your eyes to something a little bit new. This is definitely going to be like a yearly reread for me, just because of the amount of things that I learned in this book. And then lastly, I read one fiction book, and that was The Little Liar by Mitch Albom, and I also gave this 5 stars. It was a strong end to August. Mitch Albom is another favorite author of mine, and he threw it out of the park again. I think that's what the saying goes, or that's how the saying goes, but I adored this book. This is a World War II novel, and you are following mainly Nico, who is a young boy that is trying to survive the war. And he is a little boy that was taught from birth to never lie, and he actually is a boy who never lies, until he meets a Nazi soldier commander who takes him under his wing, separates him from his family, and actually turns him into a liar. So you're following along that journey, and you're also following along 3 other perspectives. I will not name who they are, as they try and survive the war. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the narrator is Truth. And it gave me, in the beginning, a lot of the same vibes as The Book Thief, because The Book Thief, the narrator is Death. But 50 pages into this book, I did notice quite the differences between the two, but it kind of gave off the same vibe in the beginning. I adored both of them. I gave them both 5 stars, so I highly recommend this one as well as The Book Thief if you do want to read a World War II historical fiction novel. With any Mitch Albom book, this book was filled with sadness and grief and impactful moments, but also hopefulness and love. And these one-liners, it's always the one-liners that get you to sit there and contemplate and reflect. That I just adore Mitch Albom's books for that reason. I am always contemplative and reflective when I read his books. Beautiful story that will hit you in all the right places, and yeah, I can never say anything bad about any of Mitch Albom's books. He's just that good. those were all the books that I read in August. A very interesting reading month. I'm very happy that my genres are diversified again. I feel like for a moment there, I was just reading a lot of romance, and I love my romance, and I still would love to continue reading all the romances, but I do find that when I diversify my genres, I enjoy my reading a lot more. But romance is also one of my number ones. Let me know what you all read in August and what is your upcoming TBR for the fall season. I'm in the middle of building my fall TBR and I am very, very excited. So I will have that up very, very soon for you as well. But I hope you all have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you for watching and liking and subscribing, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just